Yes, welcome to all of you. My name is Jennifer Hughes, and I'm the Director of the Office of Planning and Assessment here at Tech. And we just want to warmly welcome all of you to Texas Tech. This afternoon, a colleague of mine, Kenny Shatley, is going to be walking through digital measures with all of you to really give you some hands-on skills with digital measures, and he'll go over a lot of the nuts and bolts associated with building your digital measures profile. And we really want to encourage you to just continuously be active in digital measures as you start your career here at Texas Tech. It just really helps with your annual faculty report. It helps with promotion and tenure. So we just really encourage you to really live with digital measures, and as soon as you complete a conference presentation, while it's still in your head, of course, we'd like you to include all types of scholarly contributions in your digital measures account. So just wanted to let y'all know, our office, we field digital measures inquiries all the time. We really pride ourselves on being very faculty friendly. So if you ever have any questions or concerns about digital measures, or anything with regard to academic assessment, we also manage assessment for the university. Our office, again, we call ourselves OPA, Office of Planning and Assessment. We're here to help. So welcome, and I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Kenny. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, so as Jennifer said, my name is Kenny Shatley. I've been at Tech on one way or another basically since 2007. That was starting as a student, so that was a good time. From there, I went to worked at the Office of International Affairs and Study Abroad, and then had a brief hiatus, came back to Tech working at the graduate school. Partially, I started off in enrollment management and graduation checkout, and then moved up to the manager of graduate program reviews, which then led me into this position here at OPA. So assessment has been a major part of my career for the past 5 years or so, especially. But yeah, so first off, I want to start. I'm going to link this into chat real quick. This just has a just a little comment, as well as it has the link to our main website. So that's the OPA website, but then we have a digital measures specific site as well. And on that site, you'll see on the right-hand side, well, for one, you'll see one of the meetings that we're going to be having coming up soon, September 14th, where we'll be talking about this again in a more, or in another type of setting. There's also just some other information on this website. Actually, let me share screen real quick. There's some other information here that can be very helpful. We just recently updated our a lot of our videos and things like that. So over here on the right-hand side, there's just some questions, information about Housebill. There's a walkthrough for loading a course into digital measures, a syllabus into digital measures, just various things. These are all brand new. We also have this PDF guide. And so this, if you're just needing to upload a syllabus, this can be a great way of walking through that. It looks just like this. Walks through each step of the way, and then making sure that you save, and then you can even do it for additional courses. So we try to keep a lot of that information kind of front and center, but definitely this website is helpful. I've also included just a comment with just a comment for the open.support@ttu.edu email, and that is actually a that opens up a ticket anytime an email goes there. So it's a great way of queuing up an issue. It allows us to go through, just kind of our troubleshooting, and then we usually respond, I think on average within 24 hours, usually it's much shorter. So if anyone does have something specific that we're just looking for troubleshooting, you can send an email there. All right, so as we're kind of going through this, I just also want to let anyone know, if you are a new faculty member and you're coming from another institution that used digital measures, send us an email. Potentially, we can actually migrate that information over to the Tech system. And so potentially that can save a lot of time for you. We pretty much just need to know your username at the previous institution, what the institution was, and then there's a little bit of a delay as we request that data, and then digital measures migrates it. So just a couple of the housekeeping things up front, but definitely, if you have any questions or anything, you can use that email address or that website to find some information. All right, so digital measures itself is actually a faculty-centric database. And so Texas Tech actually adopted it for the purposes of House Bill 2504, which is actually it's legislature that requires a few things that are all based on transparency and credentials of faculty. So one of the first things is going to be listing your educational experience. So bachelor's, master's, PhD. Another is going to be anything related to that field that would maybe be like a career, or if you taught at another university and field. That information can be supplemental to Housebill, but we do request it. Lastly, there's a requirement that we have a syllabus for every 4-credit undergraduate course. Some departments do have some additional requirements, but I'm sure that many of you have heard of that or maybe even be here because of that. So we'll of course touch on that here in just a bit. And the reason why Housebill even exists, it's like I said, it's really about making sure that faculty are credentialed to teach the things that we are attaching to your record and requesting that you teach. And all that information can actually be found. This is just the basic tech website. And part of that Housebill requirement is that there's a public access website that does list some of this information. And it's right here on the public access to course info. And so a lot of information will directly export here. We do, again, as part of that law, make sure that there's no identifying information. There's no, we do request that, bachelor's, master's, PhD, but we don't actually put that information online. We just list it as required by law. So that's kind of the, what goes on here. I'm using English 1301 just because it's a really good example that I can just pull up. I know that there's always information here. And so you can see that there's, the instructor's name as well as a syllabus. And so you can actually go in, see the syllabus. This was from, I think, spring 2019 or fall 2018, something like that. And so the syllabus fulfills the requirements of Housebill, but you can also see the instructor, that they have their, what their degrees are in, that they're actually related to the courses being taught. Some publications and works are also exported to our public access website. So that's really what a lot of this comes down to, that transparency aspect, being able for a student to either say, hey, do I want to actually take this course, or is the instructor teaching the course, qualified to do so? And so there's a lot of, really good uses for that. There's another thing I wanted to, or rather, if anyone wants to follow along, the main website also has this digital measures login, so you can use that. There's also, I wanted to show you this login. This is Rater Link that I have open here. And on the faculty tab over here under faculty links, there's this digital measures login for TTU faculty. So just another way to log in, just so that in case anyone wants to follow along, you can just kind of follow this way. All right, so just about to get into kind of the main digital measures, kind of overview and walkthrough. So if you do have any specific questions, or if you have any, if you have any questions or anything, I'll make some pretty intentional pauses here and there. So and I'll ask if you want to unmute and ask a question, or you can just send me send a message into the chat, and we'll respond to that whenever we get a chance. And by the way, I did get your message, Kathleen, and I'll send you an email afterwards about that. So we should be able to get that transferred over, but I'll let you know. Okay, so.
You already did. Sorry, it's all done.
Okay, great. Well, there you go. Glad to hear that. I'm recognizing the name now. I knew it sounded familiar, but I couldn't remember if that was it. So great. All right, so I'm just going to go over here to the main digital measures website. So once you've logged in, most of you should land basically on a page that looks like this. If you have some additional accesses, or if you're going to be maybe running reports, it's possible that you landed on a managed data screen, and that's fine. It just looks like this. This is basically where you're able to update someone else's account. So especially if you're going to be someone who is assisting another instructor, or if you maybe manage a number of course sections with student teachers, this might be a good way of managing data for them and accessing their account to make sure things are input correctly. But for most people, you're going to land on this activity screen. So I want to start here. And this is kind of the main core of digital measures. So this is where you're going to have basically a lot of information is going to already be imported into digital measures. There's going to be a lot of information here, a lot of these sections that just don't even pertain. And so what we've tried to do is kind of focus whenever you land. There's a note here that says, please enter at least the past 3 years of information, and the asterisk screen, or the asterisk indicates a screen that contains Housebill. So that's kind of our basic way of saying these are kind of the primary ones. But to hone it down even further, in the general information section, there are 3 main Housebill sections: the personal contact information, your academic and professional positions, and then your education and postgraduate training. Personal contact information, it's very much like social media. It's just going to ask if you have a personal website or an email that you want to also include. All official emails from Digital Measures will go to your TTU account. So, that's more of it allows you to enter some information that might be used for just our scholars.t2.edu page, where we talk about research interests of faculty that kind of emphasizes collaboration. But generally speaking, this is just to make sure your data is correct. Most of it comes in from Painter. The next priority is really going to be this education postgraduate training. And so feel free to work on this now if you'd like, or you can come back to it later. But this is where you enter your post-secondary degrees. So just for the sake of example, I've got a couple degrees here. Here's a BA in Digital Measures Instruction. That is not a real degree yet, but we're working on it. Not really working on it, but it is there. So I've entered that. We've also entered this PhD for a pretend history degree that we're working towards. And so you can see that just right here on the front. You've got the type, the institution, the emphasis, the year. And those are kind of the main things that we need. And to do that, you just click Add New, and then you just come in here and answer the questions that come up. The first thing that you might notice is this viewable on public access website. And so that we do allow you to determine whether or not something can show up on the public access website, at least if it's not required by law. So these are going to be read only. It's going to default to yes when you add a degree. That's by design. The only time you would we would not want you to have something on the public access website if it's a patent, a copyright, a grant, or something like that that has to do with national security, or just some kind of financial interest or something like that, that if it were online, it might not be good for your career, for something like that, in the interest of the research. Not that, it sounds so illicit. I just mean that there are going to be some private things, but anyway, that's going to be there as a yes. For degrees, we have a number of different degrees possible. The one that people kind of get hung up on is this institution section right here. There's only 156 universities that we have listed, and that's by design. This list is made up of research competitors that are within Texas. It's also the AAU, or American Aspirational Universities, Carnegie Highest Research Universities, and then conference schools. So obviously that's not a comprehensive list. If yours is not listed, just click or type other or not listed, start typing it and it'll pop up, and then you can type the actual name of the institution. So I promise it's not a comment about quality or anything, it's just a limitation of the system. So yeah, once you've entered that, and I'm just going to enter just a fake master's degree. And then, year completed is another one of those that's mandatory. You just click save, and then it just shows up right here. So it's not too bad to upload that. One thing that you might have noticed as I was going through that is that there are a few things that are going to be either read only, that's indicated by an R. This section down here, you wouldn't even be able to see necessarily. That's hidden to faculty, and it's just because we have to have official transcripts for our documentation purposes. That's a back-end process. It doesn't go anywhere. It's only on here for archiving. But we do have to upload those. That's through a separate process at the provost office. So basically, if you just list that information, that's the requirement from Housebill, and that's all that we really request. So that's kind of the priority one at that stage. There's another section here that I mentioned. I'm sorry, I kind of navigate this a little bit quickly. If you click activities at any point, you'll just return to this activity screen. If you want to go back to the landing page for the education, you can just click cancel, or if you're finished, you click save. But yeah, if I start going too fast, just unmute and say wait, or something like that. I'd be happy to slow down a bit. All right, so the other asterisk in this section is going to be academic and professional positions. And so we do request that you list your Texas Tech positions, especially if you are promoted or something like that, going from maybe instructor to a professor position. I think we even have like foreign professors there if you were to get promoted even to that. So we do ask that you list that where you can. Housebill, what it is really requesting is just the kind of the context for your information. Some professors are coming in and maybe they don't even have a master's or a PhD in the field. Maybe they're not even working towards one. But one instance that I'm thinking of has been in the banking field for 50 years. So they have that bachelor's in banking, but then the additional education isn't there, but it's offset by the myriad educator, or the myriad experience in that field. So there are situations like that. And so that's kind of what all of this is kind of coming towards, is just to say, yes, this person's qualified to teach. And that's really what our requirement is. So for this academic and professional positions, you don't need to put that, like I worked at Taco Bell when I was 16. I wouldn't need to put that for Housebill unless I was in like, food service industry management or something. And so, that's kind of, you don't need to put that. But if you were, a teaching assistant, getting your MA or something, great thing to put. Or if you, I don't know, we have some people who work with USDA sometimes as consultants. That's another great thing to list. So anything like that. But we have a number of professors that don't have anything here because most of their education and credentials are already evidenced in other sections. So feel free to enter these at your leisure. We do request it, but if it's not there, it's probably not going to get deemed too hard anytime soon. Okay, and so as we're just looking at this general information section, there's a few other things. Administrative assignments, that's a great one if you are, manager, if you're directing like a program, or if you get a dean's appointment at some point. We have a few things here that are just really, really good for being a repository for your information so that you can easily get back to it and stuff like that. Digital Measures also has the ability to export a CV that specifically goes in within the range of time that you search. So there are a lot of benefits to doing that. It just kind of depends on how you and your department plan on using it. So just kind of starting at that point, any questions or anything so far? If you have any, feel free to unmute and ask, or if you just want to type it into chat, if it's not something you need answered right away, we're more than happy to help. But I'll just give a minute here. So if you do have a question, feel free to pop in. All right. So I'm going to go ahead just for 3 years. Yes. So that's actually more of a kind of a broad, kind of, this is a good amount. That's actually not in the Housebill text. By the way, this is the text right here. So if you need help sleeping, it's a really, really exciting read. But it doesn't strictly, I don't think, ask for that amount of time. I could be wrong on that. I'm actually thinking now, I don't strictly know if it says 3 years, but that is something that we have at least determined is a good amount of time to go back, especially for that academic and professional experience. And also there's another component, which is going to be your research record. And we'll talk about how to import that, but that's also another thing that's good to go back 3 years, but that's not at all, if you have something that was 4 years ago that you really want, emphasized on your record, go ahead and bring that in. You're not going to get dinged for more information or anything like that. Good question, good question. Okay, so I'm going to go and look here now at another section that is related to Housebill. All of these are accordion style things, so you can just kind of close those up when you like. And so there's two components here. One is going to be scheduled teaching. So this is going to be where Tech imports your teaching record. Anything that you're teaching at Tech should show up in your DM account. I will go ahead and say that, if anyone's here because you had some issues with that or you had reports of issues, fall terms are always a bit tricky because the Housebill deadline was actually August 31st. Fiscal year started September 1st. So there was definitely a little bit of, disconnect there. There's a lot of course shuffling that can occur at the beginning of terms. So, we try to be as sensitive as we can in terms of that deadline, but we just don't have the authority to move it. So what we try to do is open up that communication and try and be, very clear when we can. But understandably, some of you just had your course imported, maybe even yesterday or the day before. So this is where it went. If you were having previous trouble getting into DM, you can probably get it now. But the courses are going to show up right here. Like I said, this is an administrative account. It's just got some examples, but it's going to show up like this, where it'll have, the term, the year, course name, prefix number, section number. They actually just added this where you can filter. And so if you have an extensive record, this can be really helpful. But you can click any component of that and it'll take you into this record for the actual course. Some of these things, again, are going to be read-only. There's no reason to change the year of the term, for example. The term code in CRN, I know that that's not even necessarily something that you may work with, but it will be there. We also bring in enrollment numbers, and we've also been making some great changes in that. Enrollment number was one of the things that we had a lot of people requesting to change. Now it should be updated constantly through the year. So we are happy with that one. But if you are needing to upload a syllabus for a course, then you can go in here, you can click. There's a lot of questions and things that you can update. A lot of departments have different requirements for their faculty for what they want represented. So for example, total scheduled contact hours doesn't necessarily come in. Lower upper division, that can kind of be a little different. There's some questions here like those that involve outreach, engagement, or engaged scholarship. There are some questions here for, is it service learning or outreach? There are some notes and some short answers that you can provide. So definitely look through this. The information that exports from Banner into this page, it's going to be everything that is just baseline required from tech. But again, your department or your college may have just some different requirements, some different expectations. So I highly recommend talking with them once you get to the point of the annual faculty reports, which we'll cover here in a bit. But yeah, at the very bottom of the screen, you're going to see this course syllabus area here where you can either drag a file or you can click it. It'll open up a dialog box where you can search through and upload things. So that's kind of the way that you would upload a syllabus. We always do have some questions about this. And so what I do whenever someone says, hey, my course isn't uploaded, is I look at Banner to see if an instructor is added at the course. Sometimes there's just a delay in the instructor being added to it. The next thing I look at is the percent responsibility, which I don't think I have an example up here. We don't automatically bring that into DM, but percent responsibility is a metric that we put on most courses are going to have 100% responsibility with one instructor, but some courses are going to have a lot of TAs that are maybe 10%, 20%. And that's what we use to determine who has to upload the syllabus. So even a TA who you might hear, oh, you don't have to upload one. If you were listed as more than 0%, you might be required. So sometimes there's some disconnect. I'm sorry for any miscommunication, but this is where you can look to see if a course is attached to your record. And down here, whenever you do upload a file, I'm just going to see if I can just upload anything. Yeah, so it'll show you that there's a file there. Then you just click save. And you can go right back in, scroll all the way down, and you'll still see it there. So good way of testing. That's just the basic way of uploading a syllabus, but that is a required part of the Housebill. And if you have any questions about those, they can get a little tricky. There's some courses and types of courses that are automatically excluded, but might not be excluded in our report based on the attributes that were put in Banner. So we're definitely not here to bring the hammer down or anything. But there are some times whenever we're just operating how we have to, and some of those nuance doesn't always translate very well. But yeah, so that's going to be kind of your basic things. So you come in, update your education, postgraduate training. If you're teaching, make sure your syllabus is uploaded. And then another major component of DM is going to be the scholarship and research page. And so this is where basically any kind of citation, any grants, anything like that, this is the place that it would go. And so the two primary screens that you would use here, or rather three, are going to be either the artistic and professional performance and exhibits, the intellectual contributions, and the presentation screen. Presentation is pretty self-explanatory. Anytime you're at a conference and you're presenting, it's a great place to put that. Artistic and professional performance and exhibits and intellectual contributions can be somewhat interchangeable. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to open up both, and the intellectual contributions, what you'll see is the contribution type. We have books, we have novels, poems, essays, journal articles, magazines, all sorts of stuff that would fall under an intellectual contribution. But you may obviously be able to see how a play or a poem, while there's an entry here, could also very well go into this artistic and professional performances. I don't really have a way of telling you specifically where it would go. the main thing is that anything that you enter here, it's going to be exported into a CV or a report in the way that it needs to. So even if, let's say that you published a book on poetry and you enter it here, this wouldn't necessarily exclude it from appearing on your annual faculty report or your CV. So you don't need to worry too much about that. However, I would definitely, talk with your chair or another faculty member, a colleague, to figure out kind of where they do it. But we do design most of our reports and our templates to extract this into a place where if it was in the wrong place, it's going to be in the right category, if that makes sense. And the citation will have the right information. And so those are kind of the main two that most people are going to be using. But really, these are just a matter of coming in and entering the information. And what it's going to do is put that into a citation on your CV in digital measures. So you can enter your contribution type. Some of this may not be applicable to you. AACSB, for example, is College of Business external accreditation. So we use them. But if you aren't in the College of Business, you might not even be able to see that. Some are going to be required fields. So we'll note that by the red asterisk, but if you try and save it, then it'll tell you the field's required. So there's a lot of that the system won't even let you save it until everything that's required is entered. You can also enter your authors here. You can enter what institution they're from. You can select, what they actually did as well as their percent contribution. These screens are actually really helpful because they allow you to link citations with someone else in the system. And so, for example, in this case, this is the account that I'm on right now. But if I wanted to, I could pull any of the 11,000 Texas Tech records that we have. Pull myself for now, dox myself, I guess, but you can enter someone there. And then what it does is go back to this page real quick. What it will do is if I create it, it'll look like this, but if someone else creates it, it's going to put this lock right here. And so if I go into the lock, I can see that someone else had completed this citation. There's two authors. This is another test account, but then my account right here was also listed. So I can't edit a lot of the stuff on here. I won't be able to save it. I certainly can't delete it, but it is available there. So this is a way that DM can connect with other people. So if you ever see that, it means that someone entered a citation, listed you as an author, and it shows up right there. So in terms of Housebill and the intellectual contributions or really any kind of grants or anything like that, it's not strictly it's important that you include it. This kind of goes back into that idea of kind of fleshing out your profile so that we basically can know what kind of research you do, what kind of research interests you have. It helps for students who are looking at taking a course to see, oh, they've done this kind of stuff and I'm interested in this, I would like to take that. So we do ask that you do that. It can be a little difficult going back a few years to find that. And so I want to show a couple of methods for bringing that information in. But for the time being, any other questions at the moment, feel free to unmute and ask or type in the chat. I know that this is part of the, whenever you're putting this information in DM, I know that this can be kind of one of the more overwhelming tasks. There's a lot that you could do. And so we'll walk through that here in just a moment, but any questions or anything? We're doing pretty well on time, so I'm not concerned at all with that. But okay, so before we actually go right into that, I do want to talk about two more things just while we're looking at them. Service component. So Texas Tech obviously tries to track any kind of service that you're performing, both for the public and the community, as well as for the university itself. This information does go into your annual faculty reports, so feel free to look through that. It's very similar to the other screens. If you're looking at this and you're like, I don't know what kind of department service that could be. It does have some examples. If there was a special meeting, if there was some kind of event that you served on, recruitment activity, that's kind of what this stuff is for. Obviously, each of these, that's at the department level. We have college or university level as well. And so some of that can be really helpful as well. There's also this Raters Engaged survey. Since most of you are new, you may not be aware of this, but the Raters Engaged survey is a place where you can enter information for if you have done any kind of community outreach or engaged scholarship activities. And so this is a component that was put in with the assistance of university outreach and engagement. Birgit Green and Sam Sumner. They're great to work with, and they've helped us to, or rather, we help them to recreate this Raters Engaged survey so that faculty can just be in DM rather than going to a third party to edit that. So it is a place where this matches the Raters Engaged survey. If you hear about that, you can enter that into DM and they still run those reports. So it's just another way that we've tried to keep you in one place rather than having to go to 6 different websites in order to complete this information. So that is available. And lastly, you might see this annual report review process. Annual reports are, they're going to be required every year, usually at the end of January, and it covers the previous calendar year. So this is where you might have some of that, some of the information you might need to do. Self-appraisal and goals is a place where you can come in and just provide some context to the previous calendar year, both, generally how'd you do, but also what are some general goals for next year. Some departments take that and use it much more than others. So definitely that's another one that, as you get closer to the AFR season, I'm sure that your chair will give you some more information there. And we do have it for teaching, scholarship, and service as well. So all these components that I'm showing you are represented in the annual faculty report. It's just a question of how or when, really. Okay, but I do want to touch real quick on these, on the scholarship and how you can get that into DM. Understandably, you might have some questions about, how can you take your CV and then put that information into DM without spending just hours and hours and hours on it. And first thing that you might notice is CV imports. I don't recommend using that just yet. And the reason is that it's best to do when you have someone kind of over your shoulder telling you where stuff goes. It's a good system for being able to highlight a citation and then put it somewhere, but it's hard to do without knowing where to put it. Just like we were talking about artistic and professional performances and intellectual contributions, if you have a poem on your CV, which one are you going to put it in? You might not know, especially as a new faculty member. So I have discouraged a little bit folks from using that, but if you want to, and if you want some assistance, let me know and I can definitely help. If you have some time, we can share screen or something, go through it. But the primary ways that you can bring in information, citations or any kind of publications that you've done is if you click on any of these, there's going to be at the top right this import button. And you can click that. It's different than CV imports. This is actually importing from either a file or from another party. So Digital Measures does have a few agreements with third parties. That's going to be Scopus, Web of Science, Crossref, ORCID, and PubMed. With ORCID, it allows you to go ahead and connect your ORCID ID and you can actually import your citations that way. For most of them, it's going to be more of this system where you type a name and a date range and then click search. I tested this earlier and it actually is pretty good. For example, it pops up with this one, which is there wasn't someone named Texas Tech who was publishing anything as far as I know, but there is a Tech J, so I'm not sure who that is, but you can see that it brought in this publication that was done in 2018. You can click this button to click continue, and it allows you to bring in anything that's related to you while also seeing if it actually was. And so that's probably the quickest way to import publications if you haven't already. Again, that's only, we only have a few different third parties that we can do that with. But if you have a bibtex file, you can do it that way. That's going to be like EndNote, Mendeley, Google Scholar. You can import information that way. And there is also another kind of tool that you can use. It's definitely not a whole lot faster than doing it manually. It's definitely not as fast as importing. But on any screen, there's 2 buttons up here at the top. One is going to say Pasteboard. And this one's actually really helpful. This is from yesterday, so we'll just leave it. But what's nice about it is that you can paste something in here and it will follow you no matter where you go in the system. It's always going to have the same information there. So, let's say that you are trying to figure out if this should go in between these 2. You can go to intellectual contributions, add new, and kind of look, maybe this fits, maybe it doesn't, but it'll stay with you. And then you can just paste it and put your next citation on and start working on it that way. So Pasteboard can be helpful, but it's still going to be a manual way of entering this information. So I would really recommend using that import if possible, but it can be a little tricky. So if you have any questions or if you need any assistance, send me an email. We are looking at updating our videos actually for next year because you might have noticed it up here. There's a new name for Digital Measures. So we're going to start updating all our materials. This happened, I think, something like 3 weeks ago when we had just developed everything for the start of term. So we'll have kind of transitioned over to faculty success or watermark or what we'll end up calling So just for what that's worth. But okay, so that kind of covers our import function and our rapid reports. As of right now, any other questions or anything? Feel free to, like I said, unmute and ask, or if you just want to type something in the chat, you're more than welcome to. So thank y'all so much for being here. We really appreciate taking the time and walking through a bit. So. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to look at the report function real quick. And so I mentioned a little bit ago, there was a comment about being able to extract a CV. And so for most people who are using digital measures, what you're going to want to use is the rapid reports. And as the name suggests, it allows you to run a report rapidly. So if you click that, it's going to bring you this very rudimentary, just kind of pop-up. If you click reports, you'll notice all of these are drop downs. And this is going to be specific to what your account lists. So there's going to be a lot of these that you're not going to use, most likely, like a faculty list, you probably won't have access to. If you do, it won't actually give you much information because you just don't have access. But these annual faculty reports, those are going to be super useful, especially coming up this next year. Rapid Reports allows you to just select one of these and run that report automatically. So the general TTU one is just our foundation. It's got everything that is absolutely bare minimum required from tech. But then you can see we have like one for human sciences, one for VPA. These are going to have a couple of specific parts or components of digital measures that are going to be emphasized in the annual faculty report. It's just kind of by design from the deans or department chairs, what they want to add. So you can basically just run that, select, the previous calendar year, and then click run report, and it should just automatically come up with everything over your past year. So this has just a fake, I entered some examples. So this is a course that I'd entered with a student evaluation. You can see, I chaired a committee for a test, just some things like that. So this is what an annual faculty report is going to export as. And it's going to have information that's directly related to your past year and what goes into it. Mine's going to be much more empty than what yours looks like, because again, it's a test account. But that is kind of the main way you would run an annual faculty report. You might have some other things that you run, or if you want to look at just the presentations you've done or the publications that you've done, these are great ways of doing that. And then lastly, not all of you may have this reports thing at the top, but if you do, this is where we keep all of our template reports. You're going to have a lot more information, a lot more parameters that you can select from. So if you have this, that's great. And you've probably gone through some sort of training. If not, you have some questions, feel free to ask. But there is also ways that you can create a Vita specifically for yourself, or export data that allows you to literally pull any metrics out of DM based on the parameters and the values that you enter. So, so yeah, I think that's kind of the main overview. We will be, there's a couple things I wanted to also mention is that here at the end of September, we're going to be hosting a conference in San Antonio. It's got a virtual as well as an in-person component. So I'll just enter that here. It's texahia.org, and that's the Texas Assessment for Higher Education, or excuse me, Texas Association for Higher Education Assessment. We'll be having just a 3-day conference coming up soon, where we just cover a lot of things about assessment, data analytics, things like that. But yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I would love to open it up for more questions. But again, I do just want to emphasize that website is going to have a lot of great information. And if you do have any specific troubleshooting needs, open.support@tt.edu.